The National Health Services Laboratory at Tygerberg Hospital services the second largest academic centre in all of South Africa. It is the designated screening centre for all porphyria tests in the Western Cape. Screening for porphyria is of great importance as it is a life-threatening genetic condition which, if not managed appropriately, can be fatal. A clinician had called our laboratory discussing a patient who was in the ICU in critical condition with uncertain neurological symptoms. In consultation with one of our registrars and having provided all the relevant clinical information, it was suggested that the clinician send a fresh urine and stool sample for porphyria screening. This highlights an important role of laboratory medicine practitioners, as porphyria was not considered as a possible differential diagnosis until the case was discussed with the registrar in our laboratory. Our registrar informed the clinician of the strict, specific pre-analytical requirements for porphyria screening.
So the samples will need to be covered either in tinfoil or carbon paper just to protect it from light, and you will need to put the sample on ice immediately after collection. The reason we want it covered from light is because the porphyrin molecules in the sample are very sensitive to light, and we want to avoid any degradation of the sample that could lead to false negative screening results.
When urgent tests are requested for patients, our laboratory staff implement strategies to fast-track the analytical process for these specific samples. The clinician was informed to call the laboratory before sending the patient's specimens so they could be collected and analyzed immediately.
When interpreting the results of a porphyria screening test, like with many other laboratory tests, it's important to include control samples. These controls include both a positive control sample known to contain porphyrin molecules as well as a negative control sample known to lack porphyrin molecules. The result of the patient sample is then compared to both the positive and negative control sample, and in this case, the test for porphyria screening is positive.
After relaying this result to the requesting clinician, the patient was managed appropriately and responded well to treatment. In our lab, we provide a variety of tests that can provide clinicians and patients with essential, life-saving information. Some of the illnesses we help diagnose can be more insidious, including malignancies. In our lab, we perform protein electrophoresis and serum-free light chain quantitation for the detection of plasma cell dyscrasias and amyloid illnesses. The diagnosis of these cancerous conditions is essential to ensure the provision of specific, life-saving treatments. A clinician contacted our laboratory asking for advice about one of their patients who presented with a fracture that was suspicious. They explained that they had found bony lytic lesions on the patient's x-rays and were concerned about underlying multiple myeloma. The registrar elucidated more clinical information about the patient to ensure that the tests ordered are the most appropriate.
Considering the history we provided and the clinical suspicion, I think it would be most useful to send us a serum sample for serum protein electrophoresis and serum-free light chain quantitation. We usually use this combination because it picks up about 99% of plasma cell dyscrasias, and we don't actually recommend the use of the urine protein electrophoresis anymore unless there's a suspicion for an underlying amyloidosis. For the serum-free light chains, we do that every Tuesday and Thursday, but protein electrophoresis we do on a daily basis. And if we see anything suspicious on the serum-free light chains or the protein electrophoresis, we will automatically do a serum immunofixation to help us define what we have seen. And just note that it may take a few days for the results to be released because they all need manual interpretation by our registrars and specialists.
Our technologists are trained to perform these specialized tests. We perform serum and urine protein electrophoresis and immunofixation on a separate analyzer to our core analyzers. Our serum-free light chains are also done on a specialized instrument.
Our electrophoresis and immunofixation tests are run on agarose gel, separating proteins in the patient's serum sample according to its molecular weight and charge. Again, a control sample is done with each run of tests. The agarose gels are then scanned once they have dried, and software translates the gel into a densitometry plot, which is then used for interpretation of the results together with other biochemical analyses for the patient. Our serum-free light chain analysis provides a quantitative insight into the kappa and lambda free light chains as well as the ratio between them in a patient sample. This assists us in detecting, classifying and monitoring a patient's plasma cell dyscrasia. Our immunofixations for urine and serum are performed on the same instrument as our protein electrophoresis, but in smaller batches. We perform an immunofixation using anti-sera against immunoglobulins G, A, M, as well as kappa and lambda free light chains. This is an important step to classify any suspicious regions found on protein electrophoresis and is necessary to assist in the determination of further treatment and testing choices for patients.
Good morning. I am just calling you regarding a patient we discussed a few days ago. Yes, so we have done the serum protein electrophoresis and the serum-free light chains, and there was a very suspicious monoclonal peak on the electrophoresis, and the serum-free light chain showed an abnormal kappa-lambda ratio. So we performed a serum immunofixation, and we have confirmed that the patient has a monoclonal protein that's very strong and suggestive of a plasma cell dyscrasia, such as multiple myeloma.
The clinician was able to urgently refer the patient to oncology and hematology for further testing, including a bone marrow biopsy and further treatment. Multiple myeloma was diagnosed based on the tumor burden, clinical and biochemical information available. The patient was started on chemotherapy and monitored regularly using the same testing, highlighting the role of the laboratory in life-saving care.